of the ability to manage climate change. So we don't have much time, and I really welcome the fact that we have this panel discussion to talk about what we are collectively able to do and what in particular can be done in the state of Andhra Pradesh, but also to tie it in, as you've said, sir, to the opportunity for jobs, the opportunity to build a green economy. And therefore it is something that, whilst maybe the end point could scare us if we don't act, in the meantime I think we should be super excited about what we can achieve. So if I can now move into the panel discussion, what I'm hoping to do, time may prohibit it, but what I'm hoping to do is that we can have a discussion about the decarbonisation policy journey of India generally and take that back to the state. I might start with your good self, Avatar, to kick us off on that. I want to get in specifically into the topic of green hydrogen, where I know a number of the members of the panel have something to contribute as one of the leading technology opportunities in the space. And I'd quite like to round it up by talking about the policy environment that can be afforded, whether that's at a federal or a state level, in order to crowd in the investment that will really power that transition and that green jobs economy. So that's the plan. We'll see if we stick to it, and if there's any time at all, we'll come to some questions in the audience too. So Avatar, if I may start with you, Avatar. Prime Minister Modi has talked about this plan to reduce by 1 billion tonnes the carbon emissions from India by 2030. Now, I don't know what percentage that represents, but it's a huge chunk of what the world needs to do. And can you just paint for us a picture, if you may, about the sort of the totality of India's commitment to decarbonisation and the key levers that the Indian government is trying to pull to accelerate that journey?
So, India is not responsible for the carbonization in the world. India's per capita consumption has been extremely low. But India will have to be the only country in the world, and probably the first country in the world, to industrialize without carbonization. Our perspective is that this is not a challenge. This is a massive opportunity. And the challenge is that India is producing renewables at about 2.7 cents per kilowatt hour. That is about roughly 1 rupee 99 paisa per kilowatt hour. It is the only country in the world which has met its NDC targets, which were committed at COP21. None of the G20 countries achieved it other than India. The challenge is that India must bring down the cost of renewable from 2.7 cents per kilowatt hour to almost its half, that is 1.35 cents per kilowatt hour. Then crack water, produce green hydrogen, and become the center of the world for green hydrogen. The cost of green hydrogen is roughly around $4 to $4.25 per kilogram. Our challenge is to bring it down to about roughly $2.25 to $2.5 per kilogram by 2025 and bring it down to $1 per kilogram by 2030. This would mean that you keep enhancing your renewables to massive scales at lower prices, because in the cost of green hydrogen, 70% is renewable, 10% is the cost of electrolyzer, 20% is the balance of plant. Therefore, if you keep doing renewables, you will end up with the duck curve, which is what California faced. Its power grid could not manage so much of renewables. So you have to do 24/7 green power. And the best methodology for that is that what the Honorable Chief Minister in his very dynamic fashion said, that you have wind, you have solar, you have pump storage, and then use that to crack and produce green hydrogen, which will be the cheapest form of green hydrogen. Now what Andhra has done, 1650 megawatt of pump storage with solar and wind is the biggest of its kind in the world. And if Andhra is able to do this to 23,000 megawatt, that means that India will become the center of decarbonization in the world. And that is what Andhra holds a model for the rest of the world in terms of decarbonizing your economy. Decarbonization cannot happen with just electric mobility. It cannot happen unless and until we understand that electricity is just 18% of energy. 82% of energy is hard to abate sectors. It's refinery, it's steel plants, it's fertilizer, it's long distance transport. They cannot run on electricity. If it's renewable energy, they can't run on electricity. They run on, grey hydrogen, or they run on fossil fuels, or they run on coal. So you have to make 82% of your energy, which is hard to abate sector, green. And the hard to abate sector can only be made green with green hydrogen. And that is the challenge before the world. What has the International Shipping Organization said? 50% of shipping must go green. What has Japan said? I'm going to be the biggest importer of ammonia. What has Europe said? That we'll put border taxes by 2026. So whether we like it or not, fertilizer will have to go the ammonia route. Steel will have to go the green route. Shipping will have to go the green route. What is the answer to that in the world? That's green hydrogen. And that is where Andhra has taken the leadership under the leadership of the Honorable Chief Minister. And that is what a lesson for the rest of the Indian states and for the rest of the world. And that is how you decarbonize your economy and decarbonize the world.
Amitabh, well said, very powerfully said, and I completely agree. This is on behalf not just of the state and India, but for the world, because that green hydrogen economy is a critical part of it, and we'll circle back to that. But you just described steel as one of the hard-to-abate sectors, so it's rather fortunate that we have a spokesperson for the world's most successful steel as well as mining industry. Aditya, can I understand, first of all, do you want to just give us what's the pathway that specifically ArcelorMittal is taking in terms of decarbonisation? And you must be running lots and lots of different initiatives. Maybe you can tease out the one or two that you think are the most promising in terms of driving that transition.
Sure, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the Honourable Chief Minister here for having us. Thank you, Amitabh, for all your comments and your passion. It's clearly infectious. So maybe I'll start with the bad news. Amitabh alluded to it, but steel is responsible for 8% of global CO2 emissions. So it's massive. I mean, 8% is huge, right? We're not talking about 1 or 2, but 8% of global emissions. The not so bad news, and I'm not at all biased, steel is still a wonderful material because it is infinitely recyclable. There is no other material that can be recycled into perpetuity. You will never find steel in the oceans. And steel, in spite of being responsible for 8% of global emissions, has on a per ton basis the lowest carbon footprint, because it requires actually, relative to aluminium or carbon fiber or anything you'd come up with, much lower energy to make steel. And so that's why I said it's a wonderful material. And so 8% why, if it's low carbon, is just because so much of steel is used. So much of steel is used in anything you see, whether it's your car or this building or your washing machine or even your champagne bottle, the cork is made from wire of steel. The good news is that steel has a way to decarbonize, and we can make green steel. And at ArcelorMittal, we're selling green steel as of today. We're selling about 60,000 tons of green steel in Europe. In the next 2 years, we'll hit 600,000 tons of green steel. And how do we do it? Well, fundamentally, you change your coal-based process, because steel originally was made from coal. And as we have heard today, you substitute gas. So you can start with natural gas, which dramatically reduces your carbon emissions. And when hydrogen is affordable and available, you bring in hydrogen. So that's fundamentally how the process will evolve. So the good news is that we can actually still make the same quality of steel, maybe depending on if we get hydrogen at $1.50 at the same cost, green steel using hydrogen instead of coal. So it's a huge opportunity, right? It's a huge opportunity for providers of renewable power to make the hydrogen electrolyzers, a huge opportunity for the global steel industry to actually decarbonize. At ArcelorMittal, we plan to lead the way, primarily because we have a global footprint. We are very keen on R&D. We spend about $300 million a year on R&D. So we have $3 billion of IP in the last 10 years sitting in our business, which we can deploy to improve process and product. Over the next 10 years, we plan to reduce our global carbon emissions by 25%. Through an investment of $10 billion. And primarily it's utilizing all of these things that we have spoken about, i.e. renewable power, funding electric furnaces, setting up DRI facilities, which first use natural gas and then hydrogen. So we have plans in different parts of the world to achieve this. Coming to Andhra. So we have made a significant investment in Andhra Pradesh. We have partnered with Anil at Greenco to invest in our first global renewable project. And I think that is the key message. ArcelorMittal operates in 27 countries, and we have chosen the state of Andhra Pradesh for our first renewable project. For many reasons, I think you've heard a lot today. It's really a force in creating a friendly business environment. But I think also the vision of having direct pumped hydro storage. I had a chance to visit Kurnool, and it's very impressive what is happening down there. I think I urge all of you to visit and see really what is happening on the ground in Andhra Pradesh. And just going there, you feel the energy, the dynamism. And so our first renewable project, it's a 4,500 crore investment, $650 million, 250 megawatts of 24-hour round-the-clock